Welcome to Siliconsciousness, the DSR Network podcast focusing on the artificial intelligence revolution, politics, and policy.
This podcast is underwritten in part by the U.S. Embassy of the United Arab Emirates. Its editorial content is completely independent, and the views expressed are exclusively those of participating experts. It is presented live, without editing. For further information about the UAE's efforts in the areas of artificial intelligence and technology, go to the website of the embassy at www.uae-embassy.org and search for UAE-US Tech Cooperation. We thank them for their support. We thank everybody who's supporting this podcast for their support, and we look forward to it developing and growing over time because the issue is so important. Welcome to Siliconsciousness. I'm David Rothkopf, your host, and this week, as every week, we'll examine a dimension in the current revolution in AI and related technologies. As all of you who listen to us and have listened to us for the past couple of years know, since the beginning, the Embassy of the UAE in the United States has been a sponsor of this podcast, for which we are very grateful. As you also know, we've been very careful to keep our editorial content independent of any of our sponsor relationships. That said, so much is happening in the area of AI in the UAE that we felt it would be irresponsible not to cover it. So what we did was we sought somebody whose insights and perspectives on the developments that I just mentioned are grounded in the scientific and technological viewpoints that are at the heart of what we cover here at Siliconsciousness. And I feel extremely fortunate that we found exactly the right person to provide those perspectives. Omran Sharaf is the UAE Assistant Foreign Minister for Advanced Science and Technology. As the Assistant Foreign Minister, he represents the Emirates globally in the field of advanced science, technology, and space. Notably, he was previously the project manager for the Emirates Mars mission and is the former chairperson of the UN Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. Sorry for the long intro, but welcome.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's very good of you to join us. Let me start out with a kind of a broad framing question. The UAE has made progress on AI and advanced technologies more broadly a priority, a major priority. In fact, has framed it as being as central to the country's future as oil and gas were to its development since its beginnings in the 1970s. For listeners who are unfamiliar, can you start by describing the rationale behind this transition and the progress that's been made to date on advancing the priorities?
So UAE's effort when it comes to actually diversifying its economy has started since the first day of the establishment of the nation, more than 50 years ago. And as time passed and the global kind of landscape when it came to economic opportunities, economic incentives, economic drivers has also evolved. And over the past 2 decades, we've noticed the big, or even more, probably 3 decades, the big role that science and technology plays in defining the global economic activities, in defining nations' ability to perform competitively, globally, from an economic point of view. So the aspect of having a vibrant, creative, and innovative knowledge economy is a critical element in any developed country or any mature economy. To do that, you need to have a very capable science and technology sector. So the UAE looked at these areas that are related to science, technology, and space was one of those areas that was used as an accelerator to develop the skills and the capability. Today, as you noticed, that one of the new emerging tech areas that a lot of countries and a lot of even entities bet on uh, in a way that it's going to shape the future of the economy of the world is AI. So naturally, we actually went into that area knowing that it has a high potential of um, evolving into something that is big. And we did that long time ago. I mean, the UAE's efforts when it comes to AI was since 2017, 2018. And today we've seen how AI has reached a point in which it's actually being deployed and used in our daily routines and in daily work. Something as simple as Chat GPT and the way people are actually using it. That's just one example. So the UAE's approach to AI was based on its national interests, based on assessment that it did in the sense that it identifies the areas that it needs to focus on for the future. So it's about the future of our economy. It's about the quality of life that the UAE wants to provide to its population and its citizens. So it's about the national needs of the UAE.
So what are the milestones that you look at and say, well, these are the KPIs. These are the metrics that say we are advancing here. I would imagine that they range from technology investment at home and abroad, training, developing of the human resources behind it, developing partnerships worldwide. What are you looking at to say yes, we're hitting our goals?
So as you mentioned, I mean, if we can simplify it into KPIs, and it should be always more at this point qualitative than quantitative because it's still a new area and a new emerging area. So it's very difficult to quantify it at this point. So you always have to look at it from a quality point of view. But yes, exactly as you mentioned, it should be kind of the full ecosystem or the verticals or the pillars of the ecosystem. It's about the talent that you need to prepare. It's about the infrastructure that you need to have. It's about the deployment strategies that you need to do, and it's about the ability to prepare the society to use it and understand kind of the ethical boundaries when it comes to the deployment of these technologies. And again, going to the point again of the ethical guidelines, standards that needs to be developed and needs to be internationally aligned between all nations also, and having a system of governance that governs the deployment, the adaptation, and the infrastructure development of this technology. So if you look at what the EU has been doing, it's been looking at every single element of these. Some require like pure investments from a financial point of view. Others require more like a talent and resources, human resources development, and the other is more kind of a philosophical one that you want to develop a system that governs it. That it's not just for the UAE, but it's based on a global, agreed upon set of standards and ethics that you want everyone to be able to follow. Also, you cannot work on this technology on your own. You cannot deploy it based on your own standard. It needs to be something that is global.
Well, that gets me to kind of my next question, because you coming from where you did in the space program, working on the Mars mission, I think you spent a chunk of time actually living overseas, not just studying in the U.S., but I think in living in the Republic of Korea. You've worked on these things around as a technological practitioner, and it's really clear that advancing this requires international cooperation at a high and ongoing level, both to find partners, to create the governance and regulatory environment that's involved, and so forth. And so I think it's kind of interesting because one of the areas the UAE has led the way is how AI is sort of fit into the government. That here you are now in the foreign ministry. And so the question becomes, how does AI fit into the mission of a foreign ministry?
So, in the past, when you looked at foreign affairs, it was very simple. You just looked at it from a political angle, defense and security angle, and that defined your foreign policy. Um, with the end of the Cold War, a new element came in that is also defined nations' foreign policy, and that was economics. Today, a fourth pillar came in, and that is technology. So countries that realize the importance that technology will play in reshaping geopolitics are the ones who will be able to get the most out of it from an opportunity point of view, and the ones who will be able to manage the risks associated with it in the most effective way also. So technology will not only change the quality of life, it is actually redefining geopolitics. What you're unable to do in the past, you're able to do it today. The accessibility to the technology is another challenge. Technology such as AI is more accessible in the sense that the deployment of software tools that you're using to get the most out of this technology is something that is very volatile and not hard in the sense that you're able to just control it. So how do you make sure that people and nations, state actors and non-state actors are actually deploying it and using it in a responsible way? So that conversation cannot happen without having the foreign policy angle to it. That conversation has, the economic element to it, it has the social element to it, it has the political element to it, and has the national security element to it. So usually the foreign policy plays a role in trying to have these discussions in international platforms. And it's similar to what you look at, like if you look at space, for example, or if you look at nuclear programs or topics. Foreign policy is an important tool and element of these discussions in the multilateral and even bilateral setups. Whether it's happening between nations or it's happening at the United Nations, it does define countries' foreign policies. And I think the new critical and emerging technologies that are coming up, such as AI and in the future probably quantum, genomes, and others, will require that foreign policy becomes an element in defining the strategies, or more of actually no, it will be more of they will actually contribute to defining the foreign policy strategies and positions of nations.
Yeah, it's funny. I smile as you were talking because, I was a senior official in the U.S. government and I ran trade policy stuff. And that's when I first met Henry Kissinger. And this was little after the end of the Cold War. And he was the classic practitioner of foreign policy the way you just described it. It was geopolitics and it was security policy. And he realized that he wasn't really strong in economics. And when I got out of the government, he actually hired me to be one of the economics guys that he worked with because he felt he needed that. Flash, forward 25 years. And just in the year before he died last year, he started writing about AI. He realized that you couldn't do geopolitics going forward without doing AI. And so that's been true of a lot of people. But just as a side question, one of the things that struck me, because, I used to be the editor of Foreign Policy magazine, I know a lot of these people, that's not where their training was. And so you go into a lot of foreign ministries and the vocabulary is unfamiliar. And the vocabulary of AI is one thing. And a long time ago, by the way, they had to learn the vocabulary of nuclear weapons, right? So it's possible to learn it. But the vocabulary of AI is one thing. Genomes and biotech are even more complicated. How are the people in other ministries that you're dealing with around the world coping with that?
So it's nice to see like some ministries and for example the State Departments, they do have access to subject matter experts and they actually have the capacity and capability today to handle those important topics. Other countries are not there yet. Like for example in the UAE's case, we are the first Arab nation that actually started this vertical in its Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So it's about also using subject matter experts to better inform foreign policy and making sure also the stakeholders within the sector also operate within the umbrella of the foreign policy. Because with these kind of technologies, responsible behavior, transparency, safeguards are important elements. And you cannot do it and ensure that these are actually applied unless you make the stakeholders within your domestic ecosystem understand how this is linked to your foreign policy, and these are foreign policy commitments also towards our partners. So in that sense, I think it's some countries are doing better than others or ahead of others. I won't say they're doing better, but they're ahead of others. And the UAE wanted to be ahead of the game, and it established this new vertical that I'm actually currently handling within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs almost 3 years ago. And because it's realized the importance of tech diplomacy, the importance of access to technology, the importance of access to know-how, and making sure that our commitments to our partners are also followed by our stakeholders, and making sure that our foreign policy also priorities are aligned with our national priorities in the science technology sector. So I've seen it in other nations, and they're doing well with it. And some other nations have not maybe paid attention to it yet, but I think sooner or later they will. And the UAE definitely identified the importance of this vertical within its Ministry of Foreign Affairs more than 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've written a couple of books on how the U.S. National Security Council works, and which was established in 1947 just to get everybody talking to each other. But in your government, for example, you have a minister that's doing AI. The National Security Advisor, sort of on a high level, is coordinating a lot of these things. You've got a minister that does governance and other kinds of things. So across the government, you have a bunch of people with intersecting portfolios. Do you coordinate that? Is there kind of a technology security council function that helps ensure everybody's speaking the same language and setting the same goals?
So exactly when it comes to, again, international engagement and matters related to foreign affairs, so we are the office that makes sure that this coordination is happening at the federal level and local level also. Like the United States, the UAE, it has its federal government entities, and also has local government entities, and they have their priorities, which is all aligned or under the umbrella of the federal government. But the coordination when it comes to international engagement and our foreign policy happens through our office. So we are working very closely with Ishan Sheikh Ahnoun's team, our National Security Advisor, with the Ministry, with the Minister of AI, with our Minister of Industry and Advanced Technology, and again working also with local government entities such as the Advanced Technology Research Council or the Dubai Future Foundation, or the Mohammed Baraj Space Center, and other entities that are operating under the science and tech ecosystem. And we do it as per the topics also, and we ensure that there is communication happening.
So let me pick up on a couple of the international issues. One is, again, going back in time to when I was a government official, we were dealing with globalization, and the challenge for globalizing companies was the world was a patchwork of trade regulations and regulatory regimes, and harmonizing those became critical because otherwise companies couldn't get to scale globally. We're now at the beginning phases of regulatory regimes. As you pointed out, you talk about your subnational and national levels. Here in the US, you have city level regimes, state level regimes, national level regimes. That's occurring around the world. And, until certain standards, certain definitions are established that are fairly global, it's going to be very hard for people even to estimate the value of new technologies because they won't know how to scale them. Do you feel there's the beginnings of a discussion about this kind of harmonization happening at a multilateral level?
Definitely it is happening. And again, it's very reflective of the current geopolitical landscape, which is quite polarized. But sooner or later, the discussions should and will converge. And the UAE is playing a very active role in converging those discussions. As you mentioned, without having kind of a synchronized systems and a converged view, it'll be very difficult for people to work at the international level together. And for us to get the benefits of these technologies, it needs to be deployed at all levels. If you look at, for example, like if you look at it from a geopolitical point of view and the polarization that's happening, there's a huge risk of having different set of standards and codes of ethics being developed by different blocks. So it's very important to have that discussion in multilateral platforms, and it's happening. And the UAE is really playing an active role in bringing the views and bridging the gaps between the different views. Because without it, we won't be able to get the most out of this technology.
One of the things the UAE has done is it said we are going to be close partners with the US. A few years ago, when the US started in this area, the policy of the US was kind of, we are going to lead the world. We're going to keep our technologies from going elsewhere, particularly China. There was the whole small yard, high fence strategy in that regard. Here we are 3, 4, 5 years later, and the world has changed. More countries have more access to more technologies. Competition is starting to look a little bit more like competition in prior technologies and prior eras. And so the question becomes, how does that affect a partnership like the UAE and the US? What are the goals for the UAE in working as closely as it's choosing to do with the US?
So, I mean, it's a really, really good question. And I mean, honestly, the answer to this question is that we cannot do things the way we've done it in the past. There needs to be a novel approach on how we work together and how we engage with our partners internationally. It's very important that we keep in mind that every country works towards their national interest. And I think when it comes to understanding each other and having these discussions, it's very important that we go into the deep kind of, understanding of how we operate, what are our priorities, what are our national interests, what are our concerns and the risks. And we cannot look at it from an emotional point of view. We need to be very, very objective and understand our partners' concerns also. At the same time, our partners need to understand our national interests and the priorities. So I think given how things are developing and evolving, and it's always going to be linked to the global geopolitical status. The system that would have to be developed would have to cater to those again challenges and risks, which might bring some inefficiencies, in which you might have to have like a totally separate system to be able to work with X, Y, and Z, in which you're unable to work with other partners, for example, with. But that's kind of the current situation, and might be the situation even in the future if the polarization stays. So, but the thing is, we need to adapt. We need to work around it. We need to put systems in place. We need to have kind of checkpoints that brings transparency to the relationships between nations. We need to put safeguards that protects the interest of our partners and our interest at the same time. We need to be less emotional about the way we address these challenges. And at the same time, we need to still focus on finding ways to converge views and bring nations closer with each other. Because the more converged they are, the more aligned they are, the more efficient we can be. The less aligned they are, the more inefficiencies can be. But sometimes you have to go with inefficiencies to be effective and to be able to deploy certain capacities and capabilities in a responsible and transparent way.
Yeah, as I've found in the area of trade, sometimes inefficiencies are the most persuasive argument you can make to get to efficiencies. Sometimes
Exactly.
people have got to see the system not working in order to get there. One of the areas that I think is most interesting, I wish I could go on, and we're running out of time here, but I do want to get to this. One of the areas that I find most interesting, in part because I've dealt most of my life in dealing with emerging country issues as well, is that the countries of the global south have a particular perspective on this. They are worried about being left behind. They're worried about gaps in human resources, gaps in access to technology. But they're also worried that, the biggest international players could exploit them, particularly in issues like data sovereignty. Who builds their cloud raises questions about who has access to their cloud, who has access to their data, who controls the way their systems are going to work. Big issues associated with the cost of data centers, the environmental consequences, and so forth. And they're searching for a trusted partner in this. And I think one of the things that I have seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the UAE has been able to step into this fray in a way that the US and China and other mega powers have not been able to, and say we can be a trusted interlocutor. And I know you have programs in Central Asia, in Africa, in Latin America. And I'm just wondering, how important is that to your strategy, and how critical do you see ensuring that a fulsome dialogue with the global South is taking place, to ensuring that the AI revolution passes in a way that that doesn't create what some critics have called AI or digital or data colonialism?
So the global South is a priority, and the UAE in the past, today, and in the future will always continue to be the agent of positive change in the region and also for the global South. We've been very proactive in setting up AI for development initiatives, and soon you'll hear more and more of these kind of initiatives coming up. The UAE believes that including the global South brings stability to the global South, brings prosperity to the global South, brings benefit to humanity, but also brings benefits to the UAE and the whole globe. By including them, we bring more economic opportunities to everyone, not just to the UAE. By including them, we're creating more jobs for everyone. By including them, we actually address specific global challenges that we have that are related to quality of life of certain segments of society, countries in different parts of the world, and so on. So we've been very active in including them and engaging with them and trying to make sure that they're part of that effort. But also there's an element to it is that, I mean, if you're going to build all these capabilities and infrastructure and you're having that kind of technology and you're not getting the most out of it in serving, humanity and different nations who need it, then there is a kind of an ethical question, as in like, is this right or wrong? And the UAE, that's why it's looking at it very, very closely. And if we're going to be investing so much in building this infrastructure, of course, you want to support countries to build their economies and develop also by utilizing these capabilities. I mean, whether it's in the UAE or in other parts of the world, but you want that to happen, of course, in a responsible way. And at the same time, if you want to make sure that these technologies are deployed in a responsible way and used in a responsible way, because as I said, AI as a tool might be easier to access as a software than, let's say, a software tool than other technologies. You need to have the right mindset and the right kind of culture among the teams that use this technology. To do that, you have to be inclusive of them. To do that, you need to include them in the effort that you're doing. Or else, as I said, you end up with different blocks, different set of standards, and you might not be able to make sure that these technologies are governed in the right way. Of course, when I talk about governed, you don't want to overregulate. You want to nurture the sector. You want to nurture it in the right way, in the right direction, to make sure that these technologies are being deployed responsibly globally. And the Global South are important players in that effort.
Yeah, I just one final follow-up, if I may, because this balance, this governance balance is absolutely critical, this regulatory balance, because there are issues that people are concerned about, whether they're privacy issues or IP protection issues, or AI as a tool for accelerating inequality. But on the flip side, AI can be a path to global public goods. So we have another podcast that we do on AI, energy, and climate. UAE hosted COP28. And as we look forward to the next COP 30, I know for a fact that AI and energy and climate is a big part of it. AI can be a tool for public health and diagnostics. AI can be a tool for enhancing safety in transportation systems and security within societies. for delivering. I think in the UAE, there are actually some examples for the very efficient delivery of public services via AI empowered apps. And I just wanted to give you a moment to address how you see AI as an accelerator or a shortcut to arriving at some of these global public goods.
Definitely. I mean, it's a cross-sectoral kind of application that there is for AI, and whether it's healthcare, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in water quality management, whether it's in transportation, AI brings economic opportunities, but also brings a lot of benefits to improving the quality of life of humanity. And today we're talking about AI, but tomorrow when you end up having quantum, tomorrow when you end up having advanced kind of technology around genomes and the deployment of those capabilities to find solutions that serves our needs. Combining that with AI will even accelerate it furthermore. It's going to be a different level. So if we wait until that point reaches for us to agree on how to govern AI and how to deploy it responsibly, but also how to get the most out of it, it'll be very late. So today is our chance. AI is the starting point. It's an excellent demo for us to learn from also. There's going to be a lot of lessons learned in this process that will prepare us for what comes in the future, whether it's in quantum, whether it's in genomes, whether it's in fusion and other areas that are emerging in the field of technology.
It's terrific. I promised that we would be done within 30 minutes, and here we are going over it. But I just want to say I am so grateful for the time. One of the things we're trying to do here at Scylla Consciousness is provide perspectives from leaders around the world, and yours has been exactly what we were seeking. And I hope at some point in the not too distant future, we might be able to coax you to come back and continue this conversation, because I think we've just scratched the surface. For now, I encourage everybody to follow Omran Sharaf, who is the Assistant Foreign Minister for Advanced Science and Technology in the UAE. You'll see him speaking and writing and doing other things that address these issues from time to time, and I think he's a useful source in that regard. And thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. We're here each and every week with Scylla Consciousness and with our AI Climate and Energy podcasts. They're now both among the top 10 in their categories worldwide. And we hope to continue to grow by having conversations like this one. So join us again soon. Until then, bye-bye.